Good evening, everybody, or good afternoon and good morning, depending on when you see this recording. Welcome to the October 23rd Diversity and Inclusion Action Team call. Tonight, we are going to have a conversation / workshop / information about political diversity and why we discuss it at CCL. So we decided to entitle our program, Understanding What You Do Not Understand. So I am Karina Ramirez. I am your Diversity and Inclusion Director. My pronouns are she, her, ella. I am based out of West Palm Beach, Florida, the traditional lands of the Taino, Tequesta, Yaga people.
Great. I'm Drew Eyerly. I'm the Conservative Outreach Director for Citizens Climate Lobby. I am down in Augusta, Georgia, originally from State College, Pennsylvania. All right, so the next two slides that we're going to go over here, they're going to be a challenge by choice. They're meant to recognize things that are important to some, if not all of us. You can choose to participate in one or the other. You can do both or neither. What I am going to ask, though, is that you be respectful of those and their choice in whichever way they choose to participate. Tonight's about open-mindedness, recognizing that our differences are what make us unique and stronger, and ultimately respecting those differences as a path to understanding and productivity.
So one of the things that we do in every diversity and inclusion meeting / race conversation in any program that has to deal with the inclusion area is to offer a moment of silence. We realize we are living in very difficult and interesting lives right now. So we want to take a moment to honor those that are not with us at this time.
So I like to start our large groups with the Pledge of Allegiance, as the flag to me is a symbol of unity and demonstration that no matter how broken we may feel our country is, we're all still American and we're here because to move our country forward the best way we know how. So for those of you that feel moved to do so, please join me as I start it off. So I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So during our session today, these are some of the items that we are going to cover. We're going to talk a bit about the national political divide. We are going to talk about CCL and our values and how we see that in play with the work that we do. Drew and I are going to cover what are the challenges to our work, and we're going to talk about how we work together. And we're going to end with providing some guidelines, some suggestions of some things that you can consider. We're calling it We Think What You Know, and we will open up for a brief discussion.
All right, so disclaimer, we're going to have some vulnerable truths and some perspectives from the past and present. We're going to share those things here tonight. This is so that everybody can kind of understand the different backgrounds, how people got to be where they are today. Through that understanding of what makes us diverse, we hope to find some common foundation that we can build off of. This is not the place to attack someone for who they are and where they are politically. This is not a flexible rule, and if we see anybody breaking it in the chat or outspoken, we're going to ask that you be removed immediately.
And as a reminder for those that come to our diversity and inclusion presentations, we usually have community agreements, and these are sort of like a rules of engagement. These are an invitation for you to participate. So we ask for folks to be present, to stay curious about what you're learning and hearing, to listen for understanding and not interrupt other people. When you get an opportunity to speak, if you wish to speak from your own experience. Use I statements and or from my perspective, and use the concept of take space and make space. Sometimes we are in rooms or in sessions where some of us speak a little bit more than others. So let's be mindful of that and allow for as many people as possible to participate.
All right, mission for tonight. What we hope to accomplish here is that, Karina and I would like to provide you all with our own perspectives, and what has, really helped us come together as coworkers and friends, and by understanding and respecting the differences between us, because ultimately we're working towards the same goal. We all bring different strengths and weaknesses, and understanding who you're working with helps you, be more effective as a group. So what is our common goal at CCL? If you would, go ahead and jump over to the chat and write that in there for me, and I'll read some of your responses out loud.
And as you're thinking about what to say, think about the reasons on why you are at CCL. What is it that motivates you to do the work that you do? Think about, for you, what do you think is the common goal of all of us here at CCL?
So Kathy says building political will for a livable world. Madeline also says the same. Nadine says getting effective climate solution legislation passed in Congress. Oh, y'all are coming in quick. Minerve says to connect with like-minded individuals and advocate for climate policies. Brady says move our elected leaders up the ladder of support for action on climate change. Susan says a livable world. Ron says working together in a positive professional manner to advance meaningful climate action, or climate change rather. June says give our grandkids a world they can live in. I love it. I'm here for my daughters. What about you, Karina? What are you here for?
Common goal. Well, I usually say, right, in the work that I do, I help humans communicate with other humans. So I like to think that our common goal here at CCL is to reach as many people as possible to hopefully come and work together so that we can solve climate in the best way that we can.
Yeah. Suki says push for bipartisan legislation. And I know for me, my common goal is to, it's to create, using climate as a bridge issue, to say, showing that we can do this together. I think it's the most immediate threat to, humankind. But I also feel like here at CCL, we're laying the foundation to tackle all kinds of issues in a bipartisan, nonpartisan manner. So that said, I appreciate you guys all sharing. And Rachel came in. Hope that bridges we make, that people see that bridges are better together than they are separated. Absolutely. And I will, looks like I'll pass that back off to you, Karina.
Okay. So in this part of the workshop, we are going to see a little bit of data and get a little bit of understanding on how we have become politically, how we are seeing each other in the US.
All right, so if you guys could take a look at this animation right here, what it's demonstrating is how the political divide by party has really grown significantly and consistently over the last 23 years. In around 1994, the general more mixed in their allegiances. But you see there's a significant divergence that started around 2011 and onward. By 2017, that divide has significantly shifted towards the two extremes of the consistently liberal and conservative scale. Well, median Democrats and Republican sentiment also moved further apart, especially for the politically engaged Americans. Looking at this didn't happen in 2016. It got worse, but the divide started long before that. This was not the work of one individual that created the divide. This separation began long before, and ultimately it was created by us. Its presence, though, that was exploited as an opportunity to get votes by those that have been elected. So as a result, that divide compounded. However, we created it. It's our responsibility to fix it. On this next slide here, you can see like how over the years we're just, I don't know if it's due to social media. I imagine with the echo chambers and everything else on most topics, we've just consistently grown further and further apart. It used to be we were flip-flopped on, the different rates based on left or right. But looking at all these things, you can just see how we continue to trend further away. We want to start bringing that stuff back together.
And the reason we were talking about how the political divide came to be is because I wanted to think about how we all arrived at CCL, right? We are an organization that is working to create political will for a livable world, right? We enable individuals to have their individual breakthroughs and to exercise their personal and political power. This is what we say we do as an organization, right? So we're talking politics all the time, which in all the spaces is it's not very likely to happen, right? And we're also dealing with legislation, and usually the word out there is like, we don't really want to talk to politicians. We do not trust politicians, but here we all are trying to work on such a big issue like climate change, and having to look at each other and be like, yeah, we can be in a space where we both think differently and arrive at different points of view, but we have the same goal. We want to be able to find solution for what we need. And I always remind folks of our values, which I think is just key to who we are as an organization, right? Focus, optimism, relationships, integrity, personal power, being by nonpartisan, and diversity. Let me ask everyone in the room who's here, which is the value that speaks most to you when you think of, I am a CCLer because of this particular value? Which one stands out to you? You could write that in the chat for me. Optimism, Brady. Relationships, Nadine. Nonpartisan, Craig, I'm with you. Nonpartisan attracted me to CCL. Jim also says nonpartisan. Kathy says relationships. Ron also says nonpartisan. Salemi says personal power. Madeline says relationships. Integrity. You see how we all look at this in a totally different way, right? But we're here because we believe in essence that we can all work together to achieve this one common goal. And I love that. Susan, yes, personal power, integrity, nonpartisanship, and yeah, there's integrity again. And Suki said nonpartisan. And I was asking about that because one of the challenges that come in the work that Drew and I try to do together, right, and across the organization, is we want to be able to define what is nonpartisan and what is bipartisan, right? We are a nonpartisan organization that is supporting bipartisan legislation, in essence, right? But I went and I looked at the terminology and I'm like, oh, well, what is actually nonpartisan? How is it defined? So it says the term nonpartisan may be used to describe a group or individual that does not expressly support one political party or candidate over another, right? I looked at nonpartisan when I saw CCL and I'm like, yeah, I definitely believe that. It continues. It says, more broadly, the term nonpartisan may sometimes be used to describe a group or individual that does not promote a particular political ideology. But when we think about some essence of our work, right, we are supporting bipartisan legislation. Bipartisan is defined as relating to or involving members of two political parties. Bipartisan typically refers to any bill, act, resolution, or any other action of a political body in which both of the major political parties, Republicans and Democrats, are in agreement. Often, compromises are called bipartisan if they reconcile the desires of both parties from an original version of legislation or other proposal. And often, bipartisanship is referred to meeting in the middle, right? We like to think that all the work that we're doing is like, yes, we're getting people to talk to each other to build some consensus. And the reason why we wanted to bring this here, because we're looking at what we see out there, right? Where we're looking at the news, how people are talking to each other, how hurtful sometimes that those conversations can be. But here we are in a space working towards the common good and thinking, hey, at some point we can have the conversations we need to have, as challenging and as difficult as they can be, but we can work together, nonpartisanship, in our bipartisanship, to be able to achieve what we need to do. And I posed this question, and when Drew and I were designing this workshop, we're like, okay, well, can we have both in the perfect world? One of the criticism is, diversity and inclusion work doesn't really pair up really well with nonpartisanship. Does it actually make sense? I came across this description by Inclusive America, which is another nonprofit. And it was interesting how they were describing their concept of a representative democracy. And they use data, which is what we use in diversity and inclusion, right? Right now, the makeup of the country is changing. So is our government representative of the people that are currently living in the United States? That is the question normally posed by the folks that are doing diversity, equity, and inclusion in any realm, not just in climate. Think of any issue that we're thinking about, is usually that conversation. Are we providing folks what they need in order to be able to have that livable world that we talk about here at CCL? And I would say that for us to discuss diversity and nonpartisanship is a rare thing. It doesn't happen across other environmental organizations, but we came to an understanding here that everyone is needed in this space, right? We need everyone to be able to talk to those elected officials, to be influenced, to influence them so that we can get the climate solutions that we want. And I would argue that we are possibly the only climate organization trying to do both. And it's such a challenge, right? Because we need to be in those rooms to be able to talk to each other in a respectful manner, in ways where we're like, okay, yeah, I may not see the way you see a certain issue, but we're here for the same thing. And how do we have that dialogue in a way that we don't end up hurting each other? And I would say, can we have some vision of a representative climate solution? What could that possibly mean for all of us? If we involve all of these different people from all of these different backgrounds in trying to get a solution that could be helpful for as many people as possible, right? Because we have said there's so many solutions that we need to work on, but all of those solutions have an impact on someone. So there's always, that understanding. So what kind of conversations can we have starting tonight, going forward in our future meetings, in our action teams, in our chapters, so that we can continue to do both? We can believe different things, but still be in the space where we're working together.
All right. So last few slides, we've kind of established what, Karina and I feel is the baseline of the internal workings of Citizens Climate Lobby. We're bringing people from all different walks of life together, and trying to get them to cooperate and work together and, in order to move that needle on, positive climate action. But when you get all kinds of different types in the room, obviously people are going to butt heads, and Karina and I being at the top of those ladders, we get to hear about it all and experience a lot of the stuff ourselves and hear the complaints from the people that we work with closely. So what are some of those challenges that we do face in the organization? All right. So what we have here is the biggest one, just different microaggressions. I think, assuming positive intent and that people don't, people are inherently good. Um, I don't think that people mean to say some of the things that they say, but unfortunately we do hear these things and they can elicit a negative response. So what is a microaggression? A microaggression is defined as a statement, action, or incident regarded as an instance of indirect, subtle, or unintentional discrimination against members of a marginalized group, such as a racial or ethnic, or in this case, political minority. So, Karina and I are suffering from a lot of the same stuff, and the people that we work with are suffering from a lot of the same stuff, but it's just not seen so much. So, like on my side, these are things that I have either been told directly. Actually, they all are. Every single one of these on the conservative microaggression list in my time as CCL staff, I have heard. I can't work with Republicans. They just don't care. That one happened today. I didn't add it today, but it happened again today. You care about people too much to be a Republican. Somebody questioned the way I identify, because in their mind, me caring about people means that I'm probably not as Republican as I think that I am, because Republicans, it's impossible for them to care about people. I got told at an info session one time that I was a paid actor by Putin and Trump, and that I was just here to greenwash and basically destroy the movement from within. That one wasn't so much of a microaggression. They were pretty blatant and came at me directly for that one. Um, and the other one was during a conversation, somebody said to me, I didn't think someone who is LGBTQ plus would be a Republican. When we don't fit the mold that others have for us, people tend to push back on you. Karina?
On my end, what don't I get on my end? This is why Drew and I got together, because we started talking about the stories that we hear from our respective camps. So in my end, it's like, all BIPOC people are left-leaning, completely disregarding that there are so many people of different backgrounds and different political beliefs inside the group of Black, Indigenous, and people of color. Not everything is monolithic. We all don't have the same consensus and points of view. Things that I hear often been told to me, you're so articulate. I'm like, I don't know how I feel about that comment every time I hear it. Things I've heard other people say, when I look at you, I don't see color, right? Because in a lot of the diversity and inclusion conversations, I end up talking about race. And I can expand a little more on why that is. Another comment that I've heard often, I'm not racist. I have several Black friends. And it's like, and those things continue. Sometimes it can be in a conversation when someone is not thinking, and we're often like trying to be like, okay, how did that person mean that comment? Because as Drew was saying, if you assume the positive intent, I'm thinking the comment was not, you are so articulate, it could be a compliment. But for a person receiving it, especially a person of color, we're all sitting there like, was there something about me in the way that I dress, in the way that I speak, that the person could not assume that I was articulate, or that I had that I could express myself in a certain way. Yeah, so after a while, it happens, and we take it, and there are some people that need time to process it. So I have spoken to a lot of volunteers of color that sometimes want to have one-on-one conversation just to process the things that sometimes they hear. And sometimes it feels like I'm a bit of a therapist, because I'm like, okay, let me help and support this volunteer, because I'm so glad that they're here, but how do I help them? And in the same way, how do I help when I learn someone has committed a microaggression? Because one of the things that I have found, in the folks that committed microaggressions, by the way, I've done them too. So I'm not free of not having done that before. How do I help them understand the cultural perspective and the points of view, right? Because I'm always thinking the person possibly didn't mean that. But I often, when I talk about our issues, I usually say, we all come from different places. We all grew up differently, and we're all in this space trying to make some incredible work happen. How do we do that? And sometimes those things that both Drew and I are facing get in the way of us wanting to have the conversation. I want to have the conversation about what climate solution we need to discuss next. What is the one that we need to go after? I want to, if we're going to have an extended discussion, let's discuss the details of that climate solution. I don't want to spend my time discussing whether you think a Black person has the right to be at CCL. That's not the conversation I want to have. But I cannot tell you how often I come across some ideas like that from certain people. So what we often see in the conversation, I'm like, the lack of communication, sometimes it could be fear. There's a lot of, the lack of knowing versus assuming we know. Again, this comes back again to how did we grow up? How do we pick up the ideas that we have? What is it that we believe? And why do we believe what we believe? And there's also mistrust, right? We see it out there every single time. You get to see it in the news channels, in the commentary, and they're like, we don't have time for that. And then the bad interpersonal relationships, right? We are all bringing our own baggage to all the spaces that we participate in, right? There's so much stuff to a person that sometimes when we're like doing our work, we're all like, I don't want to hear about your personal ills, but sometimes the personal ills is what's going to help us understand what the volunteer is facing, what the volunteer wants to accomplish. Just like the same thing that we're trying to do with our members of Congress, right? Understand why they're believing that certain way and why is it that maybe sometimes they could not want to support a policy that we're supporting. It's the same thing. So I am asking folks to have more conversations among ourselves, for us to understand each other and for us to be able to move forward and continue, again, to have the conversations we need to have to do the work that we need to do.
All right, so next up is the confirmation bias. What I have found through my work is the minute that we apply a label, we also apply a confirmation bias. This happens when people would like a certain idea or concept to be true. They end up believing it to be true, and that's what forms that confirmation bias. So, a lot of times people tell me like they want to know how to talk to a conservative. And I'm like, you just need to learn how to talk to a person. Like, I'm no different than I get dressed the same way. I eat, a lot of the same foods. I'm just another person. But when you're like, I want to talk to that conservative right there, and I need to know how to talk to that conservative, you're already going into that situation with that confirmation bias. You're already preparing for their rebuttals. You're already preparing for how they're going to fire back at you, what roadblocks you're going to hit. So you're already on edge with that kind of stuff. So letting those labels go and realizing that you're just talking to a person, overcoming that confirmation bias begins with, setting your own hypothesis while also looking for instance to prove it's wrong. You know, this also tends to lead to those microaggressions. Like like I said, you can't be Republican because you care about people. You have that confirmation bias set that, nope, Republicans do not care. So the minute you say that to me, intentionally or innocently, I'm already turned off in the discussion. Why would I continue talking to you if you think that I don't care about you, or I don't care about people, or I don't care about my kids? So these confirmation biases are a big hurdle that we're trying to break down. And me personally, you don't have to agree, but me personally, I feel it's the labels that put us in these separate boxes, and realizing that we're all just people and we care about something. So let's find out what we all care about.
When Drew and I were getting together to discuss what we would be sharing with you all, we have found that we grew up in similar situations, but came out with different ideas and points of view of how we see the world. So for me, and we want to share again so you can see our different perspectives. So I grew up in Guayaquil, Ecuador. That's my baby picture. I didn't have a lot of access to a lot of things. My family, you could say, was poor a bit for many years, but I came out of that space. My mom brought me over to the United States, to Florida. I grew up here. I went to college. I was the first one in my family to go to college. And along the way, I had opportunities that other people in my family, for reasons or another, did not have. So I feel that I was blessed with just having opportunities that, got me to where I am here at CCL. Like, as some of you know, if you don't know the story, I became your diversity and inclusion director because volunteers were going around having conversations about, like, we need to have spaces for this community and that community. And somebody said, well, who's going to talk about that? And they're like, well, Karina started something like that. And, you know, all the conversations kept on coming to me from CCL staff or volunteers. And that's how I became your director. I wasn't looking for this position. I have been sort of training on the job. But I figured, you know, while I'm here and the space is made available, and we continue to talk about what kind of communities we want to engage in, which ones do we want that could be helpful in the advocacy that we do, I'm like, okay, let me engage the communities. Let me see what that can be. But this is work that I am not doing by myself, right? I encourage so many people to participate in that. But in thinking of, you know, of everything that I've done in my life, what got me here, I was like, yeah, I believe differently than Drew. Like, and we discussed this as far as like our social issues, we are totally, you know, completely on the other side, and we're there. But if we put ourselves in the foot of the other person, I usually say I am the product of my experience. So because I grew up the way I grew up, in my point of view, for example, an issue like affirmative action for me is very important because affirmative action got me to American University. No one would have been looking for me to take me to American University if it wasn't for someone that actually went, scouted out, and they're like, yeah, there could be someone that we could possibly come and invite to, you know, apply and come to the school. I can tell you that I will probably be the first one because of knowing of the communities of where I grew up. Language is a barrier, immigration is always a thing, poverty is a thing. So all of those issues for me are very personal. And I will be like the first one to advocate for people to have resources that they don't have. Other people believe differently, but that is what I came to believe. Sure.
Right. So, like as Chris said, you know, her and I have had so many conversations, you know, personal ones, philosophical ones, business ones, you name it, Karina and I talk about it. You know, and that's how we really came up with this slide because we realized that, you know, our beginnings were extremely similar. That's why we chose the pictures that we did. I think I'm absolutely adorable in that baby photo, but that kid used to bite, so don't let the face fool you. Um, you know, and to reply to like her experience here, I understand the intentions of incorporating affirmative action, but you know, for me, for many years, it was very difficult to move past my own lens around that topic. Because when I started out, my parents were struggling as well. First 2 years of my life, we lived in a pop-up camper with no running water. They had to go and get it. Um, and in my area, that wasn't such an uncommon thing. I made the choice to join the military, though, when I graduated high school in order to improve my situation for myself and, you know, and my future family, those little girls you see in that picture. And I got preference points because of that. But to me, you know, they came from a personal choice. And around that experience, I believe that if I could do it, anybody could do it. You know, to the welfare system, I believe that the welfare system is flawed and it's easily exploited. Uh, yes, I think people should get the help that they deserve or they need, but I think that it as a program is not a good program at all. You know, most of my family, they dropped out of school to collect benefits, and it was easier for them to get those benefits and get on assistance than it is to get the necessary skills or education to get off of it. And to me, that's a problem that needs to be fixed. You know, but all of this has led me to where I am and the experiences that I have had. You know, so our backgrounds, they're extremely similar, but they're looked through very different lenses of, you know, different lived experiences. I very easily could have developed the same perspective as Karina. So you can see, like, we both came from very similar backgrounds. You know, that's how you can see that we're similar. But our beliefs just kind of shape themselves based on what we lived.
When Drew and I were having the conversation about the welfare system, I was telling him, I'm like, you know, the time that I wanted to actually like participate in the system, I couldn't qualify because my education was counted against me. So it's like, okay, like even if I want to, I can't participate. But I know of people that need it. So because of it, I would continue to be an advocate for it. Yeah.
All right. So we've talked about the challenges. We've talked about, CCL and how we feel it should work internally. But it's really easy to talk about it, but it's harder to actually be about it. So how do Karina and I work together despite all the odds? So, like I said in there 2 slides ago, we have had so many conversations. This relationship did not happen overnight. For the record, Karina is one of my absolute favorite people at CCL. I think, and our first conversation wasn't even really about work, I don't think. I just talking. We were on a call together, and afterwards, I called her up. I think I even looked her number up in Salesforce, and I was like, "Hey, Karina, you're looking a little tired. Is everything okay?" And from there, we just started really building this friendship, stuff that we liked, and it made having these conversations so much more easier when we got to the harder topics, such as our difference in opinion on social issues. I knew Karina was genuinely a good person, a real person, um, and thoughtful, and wasn't just falling in line with what social media told her to fall in line with. I hope she felt the same way about me, because the conversations have always been very, very positive. Even when we don't agree, we still come out with a lot of respect, understanding, and mutual consideration to the other person's perspective.
As Drew said, yeah, the feeling is mutual. It didn't happen overnight. We had several conversations. We have also had moments where we have been in totally complete disagreement, but it comes with the work that we're trying to do, right? We agreed that we're seeing again each other as individuals. We're working toward climate solutions, but we've made a very important decision, and that's why we put there. We made a choice. And in the work that we are doing now, we are saying whatever solutions we support, right? Because in essence, as CCLers, we want to be able to support climate solutions. Can we, in an essence, agree that we should acknowledge the pros and cons of the solutions that we want to put out there for the general public? And this came up in some of the things that we had to both look at and agree. Now, come into a consensus about. We had many people tell us that we can't work together. So many. Before we started talking, they're like, no, you guys are not going to get along. And I'm like, but we're all here and we're staff. And like, as far as I know, we need to advocate for each other. How do we do that? So yeah. And one of the things that I want to sort of, add as an overall mention, when I talk about acknowledging the pros and the cons of each solution, I am not asking CCLers, and I will say this over and over again, I'm not asking CCLers to work on equity or justice. As your director, I have signed up to take the heat from everybody else that tells me that we're not doing enough in diversity and inclusion. I get those comments, sometimes from CCLers, sometimes from the people on the outside. When I say the diversity and inclusion work that we do, we just work on diversity and inclusion. We are working on changing the makeup of our organization so that more voices are included. And we are working on inclusion and belonging, ensuring that those people come here and able to engage with us, that they feel comfortable and safe and can actually enjoy the work that they're doing inside those chapters, regionally and nationally. Now, that does not mean that the people that are coming are not believing that we should have some aspect of equity and justice and accessibility and so many other things that are coming up right now. But I don't get to make that choice, and I don't get to tell everybody else to go and follow it. This is something that we have agreed as an organization that we're doing diversity and inclusion. If equity comes up, I am more than happy to have the conversation, but I personally feel that we are not there yet if we get there. And the reason why I'm saying that is because, I want the acknowledgement, which is why Drew and I agree, we're like, we will acknowledge we would want to see more of that. The pros and cons of the solutions, because realistically, all solutions impact somebody and in different ways. And sometimes we don't know that. But I figured if I am providing a volunteer, a member of the public, or a member of Congress with information, I want to be able to say, hey, I support this solution, but I want you to be aware of what are the pros and what are those cons of those policies. I think that for me feels right and just, and Drew and I are in agreement with that.
Just to double tap on that. For example, like nuclear, we had Karina had tons of conversations around nuclear, and for CCL's as an organization, nuclear is great. That addresses our focus, the organizational mission. But it does come with some drawbacks that affect other areas that are outside of CCL's scope. So it's not bad to say, hey, nuclear works for us. We understand it creates these other issues, but we trust, and hope that those issues are considered by our elected officials. But for our mission, this is good. This is a good thing for us to do. It's just that simple acknowledgement that, hey, this isn't an end all be all. It's going to create other problems, and it's okay to acknowledge those problems that they do exist. And Karina was completely fine with that. We've had so many conversations around these things where it's just like supporting each other's work. I'm not asking anybody to, go out and start doing diversity and inclusion either. But at the same time, when Karina's doing her stuff and posting her things on social media, like it's hard when the conservatives are coming at me saying, why are we doing this? Why are we talking about that? It's not for you. Sit down and be quiet. We're going to post our own stuff too. And you know what? Karina, I have full confidence, is going to support the stuff that we are talking about. And when she catches that same flack, she's telling her people the same things. Go support them. We need everybody here. We need everybody's voices here have equal weight. Let's balance the scales by lifting our voices up, not, putting muzzle on ourselves and quieting each other down. Karina, any disagreement there?
I don't disagree with you. I disagree with you with other things, but not that. No, but when we have those conversations of what volunteers are saying and what are the things that they disagree with, I usually try to the best of my abilities, and sometimes I fail. I think we all do. It's a human thing. To understand the perspective, like I tried to the best way I can to understand why that person is in disagreement with whatever it is that I am trying to do. Like I usually tell like a Drew or anyone else, I'm like, oh, there's someone that's disagreeing with what I'm doing. I want to talk to them. Like I really want to talk to them. Like I look forward to that challenging conversation. Like, sometimes I've had, no, not really people yelling at me, but they're pretty strong in their belief. And I'm like, okay, well, you believe that and I believe this, and let's talk it out. Because I think we want to model this behavior, right? Because we're also trying to talk to elected officials who also disagree with the way we see things. So how do we do that? And can we help all of our volunteers and the people in the public who are also dealing with all of this outside, have more conversations that are meaningful, that are less hurtful, that allow people to see each other for people, and move away from the concept of like, all Republicans are this, all Democrats are this, all LGBT people are this, and we shouldn't have any of that. Because it prevents us from doing what we need to do. It really does.
Okay, so in our final section here, before we open up for discussion, we're gonna, it's forgetting everything you know. That includes forgetting everything that you think you know about the opposite, political spectrum, and that can also include forgetting everything that you think that you know about your own political side of the spectrum. I know, before CCL, I thought all Republicans were the same, and then I met Craig Preston and realized that we are two very, very different Republicans. And I wouldn't know that if I didn't go and have a conversation with them. So regardless if this is the first time or the 10th time that you were meeting somebody, don't assume that you know about them. Go have a conversation. And we will talk about that here in just a moment. So what we want to do is celebrate our differences in cultures. Celebrating our volunteers for who they are. I met Zach. He's on the call here. I met Zach at the June conference, and you know, it can be very easy to be like, oh, he's a young African American man, young black man here at the conference. I'm so glad he's here, and just applying those labels, I was just like, Zach's awesome. He's just an awesome human. He is a great person, full of energy. Zach, if you can't tell, you made an impact on me. I loved seeing you work and run the speed dating stuff. It was outstanding. Um, really, at least for me, and I think a lot of people, I just want you to be happy that I'm here and not because I'm a conservative or because I'm this or because I'm that. Praise the actions that I'm taking and not the label, because even with those labels, I can still be a pretty junky human. I can have the best labels in the world and still be pretty junky. So praise my actions, not my labels. Uh, Shame and anger have never produced growth. Sometimes, it can be an effective tool, but typically, negative input is going to get negative output. So you're going to, make somebody defensive. Like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said, darkness can drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. So approach people, with positivity and assume positive intent until they really give you a reason not to. And even then, kill them with kindness. We're all here for the same reasons. We may come on different paths to get here. We may be at different places, but we're all here for the same reasons. And that is an important thing, or for the same reasons. And that's an important thing to, really keep in mind as we move forward. Remove the labels, see the person. I think I beat that horse almost back to life. Find commonalities outside of politics and climate interests. The best conversations that I've had with people is not at CCL, not doing anything political, not talking about climate, not giving presentations. It's when I'm at a river cleanup, sitting in a kayak, and we're stuck together for 4 hours, and we're just talking. A lot of the growth that I've had has been thanks to Karina when we've just been sitting around talking and we're not talking about work. Uh, the benefits of diversity, diverse representation, demonstrating broad impact with singular focus. What we really want to see here, and people need to embrace, we hope that people embrace, is the LGBTQ plus person, sitting there with everything that they're proud of next to the white collar Republican with the NRA pin in a lobby meeting, talking about the same issue and how it's impacting them differently, if not the same. Like that is a very, very powerful situation right there. That shows the breadth and the diversity of this issue and just how many people in different backgrounds it's touching. So love each other's differences, and take time to understand and respect both cultures. Assume positive intent. Just because somebody messes up and they don't greet you the right way, it could be just because of their upbringing. It's not because they're out there to disrespect you. So just give them that gentle correction, or talk to them politely about it. Don't assume that they're just out to be mean. And understand where they're coming from. It blew my mind that asking somebody their age was considered disrespectful. And I wanted to know more about it and understand why. So I talked to Karina and Stephanie about it, and they took the time and they explained it to me. So I know in certain cultures that I probably should not do that. But I also trust that if I was to accidentally slip up with them, they wouldn't beat me over the head about it.
Right. In complete agreement. Like the reason why we created a diversity and inclusion action team, right? Because we've been having this question for years on like, what is it that we need to have conversations about, right? And there's a lot of things to learn, right? This particular workshop and discussion is about political diversity. There's so many other topics. Think about anything that we haven't discussed yet, right? We still have not had a session about LGBTQ pronouns, right? And for some people, those conversations and information can be like, but they should know by now. TCLers should know by now, like, that you have to be respectful of people's pronouns. And depending on who are you addressing? Like I took it upon myself to learn why people are using the pronouns, right? It's not something that I use per se for myself, but I realized if I want to engage with members of the LGBTQ community who 100% like feel in their body that they need to be addressed by a certain pronoun, then out of respect to them, I will go and learn why they're using that pronoun. We're having the same conversations here about the need for more accessibility, the need for more ASL translation, right? Because we're talking about inclusion. How are we including those voices that are totally taken out of the space for one reason or another? A conversation that has come up often during our conference, can we have more ramps? Can we help people that actually, have a wheelchair? Can they comfortably and safely go around the hotel when we're having our own conference? Like, how do we become accommodating so that more people can be included in the work that we want to do? I can go and continue talking about language, right? How many languages are we providing information for people? I heard Spanish, people want Chinese, someone else wanted Haitian Creole. Like, I am completely open to the ideas of trying different things. I am not trying to like make it across the board. So I'm like, so if you're in the Northeast and you find that you have communities that want to talk in a that you want to engage with that speak a different language, I am more than happy to help in the best way that I can. But that's because I know that you and your region or your chapter or you as an individual person want to engage with someone that communicates in a different way. And this is the same thing with cultures, right? The conversation with Drew about age is a big thing for us. In the Latino culture, I'm like, I don't think I'll ever ask my elder how old they are. I was like, that's just it's not right. We see it as not right. But for some people, it's like, it's like, let's just age, it's no big deal. But those are the things that we hope that as we continue to have more workshops inside this action team, that we learn a bit about how other people see their lives and their perspectives. And so that we can all, when we're talking about climate solution, that hopefully can, that we can all be in agreement with, that we can understand each other and have great dialogue. And with that, I will open up the floor. It's 8:54. So let's see what we can do in 6 minutes if you have questions. Zach, can you take up off the screen so that we can see each other? Susan.
Yes. My question is, if you were going to give coaching to someone who was having a Thanksgiving Day conversation with someone in your family or a friend, and they were, so a short summary of interacting with a climate denier.
Oh, that's a very interesting one. Interacting with a climate denier. I have been in a conversation with someone like that. And I'm trying to remember what happened in my conversation. I think we ended up with, well, at first, like someone's going to get upset because I'm like, oh my God, you're believing something that is just, I don't believe in any of that. That's not true. But I find that when I talk to people about like, maybe it should be something that I should have pictures of people drowning. and I'm like, if I show you, would that at least help you connect that there are some people in different places that are suffering from the effects of these things that we're seeing in our weather? I try to the best of my abilities to tone it down, not use a lot of data, because usually the climate denier is not going to be like, yeah, prove to me with the data, why is it that I should believe in it? But I think that if they're able to see someone that is suffering from it and connect to the human part of that, that maybe there could be a conversation that can take place. Drew, what do you think?
My approach is pretty different. I'm not going to spend time trying to make my issue somebody else's issue. What I will do is take the time to listen to them and hear what their issues are, and then see how my issue overlaps with their issue and how it's all connected. Find that common ground, that common foundation, and then build off of that. It's how I got here. Somebody knew that I was concerned with energy infrastructure, and they got me to the table on energy infrastructure, and through there I learned about everything else and became a believer. So that's how I do it. When I'm having those tough talks, it's what do you care? What do you care about? Well, I care about, the real estate market. Oh, well, you see how they're doing, climate impacts on home insurance now, stuff like that. So find a way to get that overlap and making them turn into a believer in a 20-minute dinner.
Madeline, you want to share what you're writing in the chat?
Okay. Just in my experience in a big family dinner, it's a terrible time to talk to somebody who disagrees with me on climate because it's happening in front of everybody else in the family who's going to pile on and pile in and weigh in. And so what I've tried to do and have occasionally succeeded at is say enough to distinguish, to make me not sound like who they think I am on climate. Which usually means find something to appreciate and then ask if we could talk more later because I'm really interested, but it's, not the best time there. And that's occasionally worked for me.
Thanks so much for sharing. David, thank you so much for that. I'm bad at taking compliments. Okay. I'll read what he says for those who are listening to the recording. David said, this is an inspired workshop where Karina and Drew are investing in. A mutual relationship is wonderful and serves as a model for all of us, but we have work to do. In my opinion, CCL has become a diverse set of silos progress, and our grassroots outreach is skewed because many of us don't want to get outside our comfort zones and rarely engage with people on the other side. It's limiting CCL in a big way. Thanks so much for sharing that perspective. I would add to that in the last 4-5 years that I've been doing this work, I have seen more desire for more people to want to engage with communities that they have not interacted with. And again, this is why I say we are the product of our experiences. I have known people that have only lived in white neighborhoods and probably have never met a person of color in their life. That is completely possible, which is also completely possible for a person of color to only know the people of color in her community, in their community, and not be comfortable in spaces where the predominant group is a white individual, a white community, right? And it is difficult to set ourselves outside of our comfort zone. And when we start telling the story, Drew and I, of the work that we do, I usually tell people, I'm like, someone smiled at me when I came to CCL. I went to a Boca chapter meeting and a volunteer smiled at me, and that was the reason why I stayed. But I was the only Latina in that room. And I was scared for my life. Because I'm like, what is this? What am I walking into? But here we are years later, right? So here we are making spaces for other communities that possibly come with more ideas of things that we try out. I am open again to trying out different things because it is just the way I feel that we can continue to do the best advocacy work. I think we're a phenomenal organization that if we continue to open doors for different communities and, bring their ideas here, that we can do a lot more, that we can reach out more people.
Create a home for them here. So I know for my specific line of work with conservative outreach, I've got some classes coming out, courses coming out in the hopefully near future where, you can help chapters that have a space for the conservative to be a conservative, not just a Democrat in a red tie, and how to effectively, enable them and, make them part of the team, a valuable part of the team.
Or do the thing where we're so excited to see a person of color that we immediately want to make them like a leader so incredibly fast. And then half of the time I'm like, give the person a second to learn how the organization works Like one of the things that I've done with the diversity and inclusion fellows, Minerva's one of them and Zach is one of them. The ones that I've had in the last couple of years, I usually send them scouting across the organization because I am always looking for new ideas. So they're like during the first week, I'm like, I want you to go scout, go to action team meetings, go to a chapter meeting, go to a climate advocacy training. And then I ask for feedback. And I say, so tell me, if you had an opportunity to change something in what you saw or to try something differently, what would you try? The reason why we have diversity workshops or inclusion workshops is because the first class of fellows were like, we need education, Karina. So the first class of fellows, created an entire list of workshops that were not as popular as I would have liked them to be, right? But I know that people go from time to time to look at those videos because they provided information. So again, open to try something else. All right, it is 9:02. I want to thank you for being with us. We normally in the diversity and inclusion workshops, we usually stay like another 5-10 minutes after the recording. So I will stop the recording now. And I want to thank you for your time and for listening. And I hope that once we put this information out there, that you can share this with your chapter.